The air at Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport was thick with the oppressive heat of an Ahmedabad afternoon. It was Thursday, the 12th of June, 2025. Inside the cool terminal, passengers for Air India flight AI-171 were going through the final boarding procedures. The flight was bound for London, a long-haul journey many were excited to begin. Families were saying their last goodbyes, business travelers were checking their emails one last time, and the cabin crew prepared the aircraft for its passengers. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, with its registration VTANB, stood gleaming on the tarmac, its engines ready to power it across continents. It was just another day, another flight, another routine departure from a busy Indian airport. On board, the atmosphere was a familiar mix of anticipation and the low hum of the air conditioning. Passengers settled into their seats, stowing their carry-on luggage and buckling their seatbelts. The safety demonstration video played on the seatback screens, a familiar ritual for frequent flyers. In seat 11A, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh looked out the window, watching the ground crew finish their final checks. He was looking forward to his trip, a new chapter in his life. The cabin doors were closed and armed. The pilots completed their pre-flight checklists, their voices calm and professional over the internal communication system. Everything pointed towards a completely normal and uneventful flight. The aircraft was pushed back from the gate right on schedule. It taxied slowly towards the runway, its massive wings slicing through the shimmering heat waves rising from the asphalt. Inside, the cabin was quiet as the pilots received their clearance for takeoff from air traffic control. The captain's voice came over the public address system, welcoming everyone on board and announcing an estimated flight time of just over 9 hours. He informed them they were next in line for departure. For the 241 souls on board, this was the final moment of peace before their world would be irrevocably shattered in the most unimaginable way. At 13:38 IST, the Dreamliner lined up on the runway. The powerful engines spooled up with a deafening roar, pressing passengers back into their seats as the aircraft began its powerful acceleration. The feeling of immense thrust was exhilarating, a testament to the marvel of modern aviation engineering. The nose lifted gracefully, and the wheels of VTANB left the ground. Air India flight AI-171 was airborne, climbing into the hazy sky over Ahmedabad. For a few brief seconds, everything was perfect. The plane was flying, on its way to its destination, just as it was designed to do. The journey had begun. The initial climb was steep and steady, a standard procedure for a heavily loaded long-haul flight. The landing gear was still down, and the flaps were extended to provide maximum lift at low speed. But just as the aircraft passed a few hundred feet, a catastrophic event unfolded in the cockpit. A loud bang echoed from the right side of the aircraft, followed by a violent shudder that ran through the entire airframe. Warning lights flashed across the pilot's instrument panels and alarms blared through their headsets. The right engine had suffered a major uncontained failure. The pilots immediately began fighting for control. With one engine gone, the aircraft started to yaw dangerously to the right. The pilots worked furiously, applying left rudder to counteract the asymmetric thrust and trying to stabilize the plane. They were trained for this, but the situation was deteriorating with terrifying speed. The aircraft was not gaining any more altitude. In fact, it began to stall, losing the precious airspeed needed to stay airborne. The nose pitched down as the plane struggled to fly on the power of its single remaining engine. Panic began to set in among the passengers as the aircraft lurched violently, the sounds of the struggling engine filling the cabin with a horrifying noise. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday! Air India 171, engine failure!" one of the pilots transmitted, his voice strained with urgency. It was a desperate call for help, a signal to the world that they were in grave danger. On the ground, air traffic controllers watched in horror as the radar blip for AI-171 stopped climbing and began to descend rapidly. They tried to respond, to offer assistance, but there was nothing they could do. The aircraft was too low, too slow, and losing its battle against gravity. The pilots were wrestling with the controls, but the Dreamliner was no longer responding as it should. In the cabin, chaos had erupted. People were screaming, praying, and holding on to their loved ones. The world outside Vishwash Kumar Ramesh's window in 11A was tilting at an impossible angle. He could see the ground rushing up to meet them, the buildings of the city growing larger with each passing second. The final moments were a blur of noise, vibration, and pure, unadulterated fear. The aircraft, now completely out of control, was on a collision course with the dense urban landscape below. The 30 seconds that had passed since takeoff had felt like an eternity that was about to come to a devastating end. The crippled Boeing 787 descended directly over the BJ Medical College campus. Its final, desperate flight path took it straight towards a student hostel. At 13:39 IST, with its landing gear still down and flaps extended, Air India Flight AI-171 slammed into the dining hall of the building. The impact was cataclysmic. A massive explosion erupted as thousands of kilograms of jet fuel ignited, sending a fireball and a plume of thick black smoke billowing into the sky. The sound of the crash was heard for miles, a thunderous roar that shook the entire neighborhood of Meghani Nagar and signaled an unprecedented tragedy. The scene was one of utter devastation. The aircraft had disintegrated, its wreckage merging with the shattered concrete and twisted steel of the college building. What was once a place of community for students and doctors was now a raging inferno. Students who had been in the dining hall or nearby were caught in the blast, their lives cut short in an instant. Those in other parts of the building were thrown from their feet by the force of the impact. Confusion and terror reigned as survivors stumbled out of the debris, covered in dust and blood, their minds struggling to process the horror they had just witnessed. The emergency response was immediate and massive. Within minutes, the first fire engines and ambulances arrived, their sirens wailing as they navigated through the chaotic streets. Over 130 firefighters and army paramedics were deployed to the scene, facing an incredibly challenging and dangerous situation. They battled the intense flames, trying to cool the wreckage enough to search for survivors. The rescue operation was a race against time, a desperate effort to pull anyone alive from the fiery tomb that the crash site had become. The scale of the disaster was overwhelming, a scene of carnage that would be seared into the memory of every first responder present. As the hours passed, the grim reality of the situation became clear. The rescue teams worked tirelessly, recovering bodies from both the aircraft wreckage and the destroyed building. The final toll was heartbreaking. All 241 people on board the aircraft, except one, had perished. On the ground, at least 28 students and doctors lost their lives. The area was cordoned off as a disaster zone. High-ranking officials, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, visited the site to witness the devastation firsthand and offer condolences. The focus soon shifted not only to recovery, but also to finding answers to why this terrible tragedy had happened. Amidst the complete and utter destruction, something truly miraculous occurred. A single person from the aircraft had survived the impact. Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, who had been seated in 11A on the left side of the plane, was found alive. He was discovered by rescue workers, semi-conscious and trapped in a section of the fuselage that had been thrown clear of the main inferno. He had been ejected from the main wreckage upon impact, a freak occurrence that saved his life while everyone around him perished. His survival was a small, flickering light in an overwhelming darkness, a testament to the unpredictable nature of fate. Vishwash's escape was nothing short of extraordinary. He later recalled the terrifying final seconds, the violent shaking, the screams, and the sudden, brutal impact. He remembered an intense feeling of being thrown, followed by blackness. When he regained consciousness, he was surrounded by smoke, fire, and the mangled remains of the aircraft he had been on just moments before. He was in immense pain, but he was alive. Rescuers carefully extricated him from the debris and rushed him to the hospital, where he would begin a long road to physical and emotional recovery. He was the sole survivor of Flight AI-171. As the recovery efforts continued, the investigation into the cause of the crash began. Investigators from the Directorate General of Civil Aviation arrived at the scene. Their task to piece together the chain of events that led to the disaster. A crucial piece of evidence, the flight data recorder, or black box, was recovered from a rooftop near the crash site. It had been ejected during the breakup of the aircraft. This device held the key to understanding the aircraft's final moments, the precise details of the engine failure, the inputs of the pilots, and the performance of the aircraft systems. The investigation would focus on several key areas: the nature of the engine failure, why the pilots were unable to maintain control, and the status of the flaps and landing gear at the time of the crash. The data from the black box, combined with the wreckage analysis and witness statements, would help build a complete picture of the tragedy. For the families of the 269 victims, the investigation offered the only hope for answers and perhaps a sense of closure. For the world, the story of Air India Flight AI-171 became a somber reminder of the fragility of life, marked by immense loss, but also by the incredible, unbelievable miracle of one man who survived.